The morning sun was already hot when Rita reached the fancy neighborhood. Her feet hurt from walking so far, and her whole body felt heavy with pain. She was only 42 years old, but she felt like an old woman. The sickness inside her body had been eating away at her strength for years now. She stood outside the big iron gate, holding her old cloth bag close to her chest. Inside that bag was her only cooking pot. It was scratched and dented, but it was clean. She had scrubbed it that morning with the last bit of soap she had. Rita watched as expensive cars drove past her. People in nice clothes walked by without looking at her. She knew what she looked like. Her dress was old and had been washed so many times that the color had faded. Her hair was tied back with a rubber band because she had sold her hair clips months ago to buy milk for her children. But she wasn't here to beg. No, Rita had promised herself she would never beg. She had something to offer. She could cook. Her grandmother had taught her everything, and people used to say her food could make anyone smile. A car pulled up near the gate. A man stepped out carrying a leather bag. He looked tired but kind. His clothes were nice but not too fancy. Something about his face made Rita take a deep breath and walk toward him. Her legs shook as she moved. The pain in her joints was bad today, but she pushed it away. Her children's faces filled her mind. Little Amir, who was 8 years old. Sweet Zara, who was 6, and baby Fahad, only 4 years old. They hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. The man noticed her approaching. Rita saw him tense up a little, the way people do when they think someone might ask them for money. But she came closer anyway, her voice cracked when she spoke. The words came out all jumbled at first. She was nervous and weak, and tears started rolling down her cheeks before she could stop them. She told him about her children, how they were at home right now, in that one small room she rented in the old building across town, how they had only drunk water yesterday, how the day before, she had found 2 pieces of stale bread in a shop's garbage and had given it to them, how baby Fahad had cried last night holding his empty stomach. The man's expression changed. He was listening, really listening. Rita quickly wiped her tears with the back of her hand. She didn't want to seem weak. She wanted him to understand that she wasn't asking for charity. She opened her bag and showed him the cooking pot. Her words came faster now. She explained that she wasn't begging for money or food. She was offering her skills. If he or anyone he knew could just give her some ingredients, any ingredients at all, she would cook for them. She would make the best meal they had ever tasted, and whatever was left over, whatever they didn't want, she would take that home to her babies. She told him she used to work as a cook in small homes. She had cleaned houses too. But 6 months ago her husband left. He just disappeared one day, tired of a sick wife and 3 hungry mouths to feed. She had tried to keep working, but the sickness got worse. The pain became so bad that she couldn't clean floors on her hands and knees anymore. The families she worked for had to let her go. But cooking was different. She could cook sitting down if she needed to. She could lean against the counter when the weakness came. Her hands still worked. Her memory still held all those recipes her grandmother had taught her. The man stood there quietly, looking at her face. Rita could see him thinking. She could almost see the doubt in his eyes. How many times had he heard sad stories? How many people had lied to him? She didn't blame him for doubting. But she looked straight at him, letting him see the truth in her eyes. She wasn't lying. Her children really were starving. She really was in pain. But she could still cook. That was the truth. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. She told him that her hands were shaking from weakness, that her back hurt so much she wanted to scream, but she could push through that. She had been pushing through pain for years. What she couldn't push through was watching her children go hungry. That pain was worse than anything her body could feel. She said she had walked for 2 hours to reach this neighborhood because someone had told her that rich people lived here. People who might need a cook. People who might give her a chance. The morning was getting hotter. Sweat mixed with tears on Rita's face. Her legs felt like they might give out any second. But she stood there waiting, hoping, praying that this man would be different. That he would see her not as a beggar, but as a mother trying to feed her children. As a cook offering her skills. As a human being asking for a chance to work with dignity. The man's face softened. He looked at her cooking pot, then back at her face. Rita held her breath. This moment felt like it would decide everything. Would he walk away like others had? Would he give her some money just to make her leave? Or would he give her what she really needed? A chance to prove herself, A chance to cook. A chance to earn food for her babies. The silence stretched between them. Rita's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Her whole future, her children's next meal. Everything depended on what this stranger would say next. She gripped her cloth bag tighter, feeling the metal of the pot inside. That pot had cooked thousands of meals. It had fed her own family when times were good. Now she needed it to save them. Ahmed looked at the woman standing in front of him. He had heard many stories over the years. Running a restaurant meant people often approached him with requests, with problems, with their hands out. He had learned to be careful, to protect himself from being taken advantage of. But something about this woman was different. Her eyes held something he recognized. It wasn't just desperation. It was pride fighting against desperation. It was dignity struggling to survive. He thought about his own journey. 20 years ago, he had started with nothing. He had washed dishes in other people's restaurants, saved every coin, dreamed of having his own place. He remembered what it felt like to be hungry, to be invisible to people who had more than him. Ahmed made a quick decision. He told Rita to wait. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Then he looked at her and said something she didn't expect. He told her he owned a restaurant. Not a huge fancy place, but a good one. People came there for honest food and fair prices. Today, he had a problem. His main chef had called in sick that morning. The evening shift was going to be crazy busy, and he was short on help in the kitchen. Rita's eyes went wide. She wasn't sure what he was saying. Ahmed explained more. He would give her a test. Just one test. If she could come to his restaurant right now and cook one dish, just one dish that met his standards, then she could work the evening shift. She would get paid. She would get food to take home. Fair payment for fair work. Rita felt her knees go weak, but this time not from pain. From hope. Hope was flooding through her so fast it made her dizzy. She nodded quickly, almost too quickly. Yes, she could do it. She would do it. She would cook anything he wanted. Ahmed told her to get in his car. Rita hesitated. She had taught her children never to go with strangers. But what choice did she have? This was a chance. Maybe the only chance she would get. The drive to the restaurant took 15 minutes. Rita sat in the passenger seat, clutching her bag, trying to steady her breathing. Ahmed asked her some questions. What kind of food did she cook? Where had she learned? How long had she been cooking? She answered each question, her voice getting stronger as she talked about food. Food was the one thing she was confident about. She told him about her grandmother, who had cooked for weddings and big family gatherings. How she had learned to adjust spices just by taste. How she knew when oil was the right temperature just by looking at it. When they reached the restaurant, it was still early. The lunch service had just ended. A few staff members were cleaning tables. They looked at Rita with curious eyes. Ahmed told them she was here to help out today. He led her through to the kitchen. Rita stopped in the doorway. Her mouth fell open. The kitchen was beautiful. Shining steel counters. Big gas stoves with blue flames. Shelves full of spices and ingredients. Proper knives hanging on a magnetic strip. Everything was so clean, so organized, so professional. Rita had cooked in many kitchens, but never one like this. She had worked in tiny home kitchens with one small stove. She had cooked on a single burner in her own room, but this was a real restaurant kitchen. For a moment, fear gripped her. What if she messed up? What if she didn't know how to use this equipment? What if she disappointed this man who was giving her a chance? Her hands started shaking again. The pain in her body, which she had pushed away during the car ride, came rushing back. She felt weak. She felt small. She felt like she didn't belong here. Ahmed noticed her hesitation. He spoke gently. He told her not to worry about the fancy equipment. Good cooking came from the heart and the hands, not from expensive tools. He just wanted to taste her food. That was all. He opened the big refrigerator and pulled out ingredients. Chicken, fresh vegetables, rice, onions, tomatoes. He showed her where the spices were. He told her to cook whatever she felt comfortable cooking. Something from her heart. Something she was confident about. Rita took a deep breath. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about her children. She thought about all those years of cooking, of feeding her family, of making people happy with her food. She set down her old cloth bag and tied her hair back more securely. She washed her hands in the big steel sink. The water was hot and clean. She scrubbed her hands properly for the first time in days. Then she started working. She asked Ahmed if she could cook a traditional dish from her village. He nodded. He told her the kitchen was hers for the next hour. Rita's hands moved with memory. Even though they shook, even though pain shot through her joints, her fingers knew what to do. She heated oil in a pan. She listened to the sound it made. Perfect. She started cutting onions. Her knife skills were good. Ahmed watched from a distance, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Rita added spices, not measuring them, just feeling the right amounts. A pinch of this, a little more of that. She tasted as she went, adjusting, balancing. The kitchen started filling with smells. Rich, warm, inviting smells. The other kitchen staff started appearing, drawn by the aroma. They watched this strange woman, this thin, tired-looking woman in old clothes working at their counter. They watched how she moved, how she tasted, how she adjusted the flame with confidence. Rita forgot about everything else. She forgot about the pain. She forgot about her fear. She forgot about the fancy kitchen. All she thought about was the food, making it perfect, making it speak for her. She was cooking her grandmother's chicken curry, the recipe that had been passed down through generations. Simple ingredients, but the technique made it special. The way you browned the onions, the order you added spices, the exact moment you added the tomatoes, how long you let it simmer. After 40 minutes, she put the dish on a white plate. Her hands were shaking badly now. She was exhausted. But the food looked good. It looked right. Ahmed came over. He looked at the plate. Rita held her breath. This was it. This moment would decide everything. Ahmed picked up a fork. The kitchen had gone quiet. Even the staff members who were supposed to be working had stopped to watch. Rita stood there, gripping the counter edge to keep herself upright. Every muscle in her body ached. The burst of energy that had carried her through cooking was fading fast. But she kept her eyes on Ahmed's face. He took a small bite. Chewed slowly. His expression didn't change. Rita felt her heart sinking. Maybe it wasn't good enough. Maybe she had messed up. Maybe this whole thing had been a mistake. Ahmed took another bite. Then another. Still his face showed nothing. The silence in the kitchen felt heavy. Then something happened. Ahmed closed his eyes. He took a deep breath through his nose, savoring the aroma. When he opened his eyes again, they looked different, softer, almost surprised. He didn't say anything at first. He just kept eating. He finished half the plate before he finally put down the fork. Ahmed looked at Rita, really looked at her. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled, not a polite smile. A real one. He told her the truth. He said he had been running this restaurant for 15 years. He had hired professional chefs, people with certificates and training. He had tasted food from all over the city. But this dish, this simple home-cooked curry, reminded him of something he had almost forgotten. It reminded him of why he fell in love with cooking in the first place. Not because of fancy techniques or expensive ingredients, but because of the feeling food could create. The warmth, the comfort, the love that could be tasted in every bite. Ahmed called over his assistant manager. He told him to taste it too. The manager took a bite and his eyebrows went up. He nodded, impressed. He said something in a low voice to Ahmed, and Ahmed nodded back. Rita was still standing there, not sure what was happening. Was this good? Was this bad? She felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt a little. Ahmed noticed her swaying. He quickly pulled out a chair and made her sit down. He got her a glass of water. Rita drank it fast, her hand shaking so much that water spilled down her chin. Ahmed sat down across from her. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. He spoke clearly so she would understand every word. He told her she passed the test. More than passed it. Her cooking was exactly what his restaurant needed. But he could see she was not well. He could see the pain in her movements, the weakness in her body. So here was his offer. Not just for today. A real offer. He would hire her part-time. 3 evenings a week to start. She would come in during the afternoon before the dinner rush. She would prepare 2 or 3 special dishes each day. Traditional home-style food. The kind of food that made people remember their mothers and grandmothers. The kind of food that filled not just stomachs but hearts. The hours would be flexible. If she needed to sit while cooking, she could sit. If she needed breaks, she could take them. He wasn't looking for someone to work like a machine. He was looking for someone who could bring soul to his menu. Rita's eyes filled with tears. She tried to speak but couldn't. The words stuck in her throat. Ahmed wasn't finished. He told her about the payment. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was fair. Enough to pay rent. Enough to buy food. And every day she worked, she could take home a full meal. Not leftovers. Not scraps. A proper meal packed in containers. Enough for her and her 3 children. Now the tears came flowing. Rita couldn't stop them. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed. All the fear, all the stress, all the hunger, all the pain of the past months came pouring out. The kitchen staff looked away, giving her privacy. They understood. Some of them had their own struggles. They knew what it meant to be desperate, to need a break, to hope for kindness. Ahmed waited patiently. He didn't rush her. He just sat there letting her cry. When Rita finally looked up, her face was red and wet, but something had changed in her eyes. The hopelessness was gone. In its place was something bright, something alive. She tried to thank him. She stumbled over her words, mixing them up, but the gratitude poured out. She promised she would work hard. She would never let him down. She would cook with everything she had. Ahmed held up his hand, stopping her. He said she didn't need to promise anything right now. He just needed her to do one thing today. Go home, feed her children, get some rest. Come back tomorrow evening at 4 o'clock, ready to work. But first, he said, she should eat something herself. Right now, he could see she was running on empty. Rita started to protest. She said she was fine. She just needed to get food home to her children. Ahmed shook his head. He told his staff to prepare a plate for Rita. And while they did that, he started packing containers with food. Rice, curry, bread, some vegetables, fruit. He packed enough for several meals. When the staff brought out a plate for Rita, she stared at it. It had been so long since someone served her food. She had forgotten what it felt like. She ate slowly at first, then faster. Her body was screaming for nutrition. The food tasted like heaven. Simple restaurant food, but to her starving body it was a feast. Ahmed added more items to the containers. He included some cooking basics too. A small bag of rice, some lentils, a bottle of oil, tea bags, sugar, things that would help her feed her children for the next few days. Rita watched him pack everything. She kept thinking this was a dream, that she would wake up back in her room with her hungry children and realize none of this was real. But it was real. Ahmed handed her 2 large bags full of food and supplies. He also gave her money. He said it was in advance on her salary, so she could buy anything else her children needed. Rita took the money with trembling hands. She looked at the bills and started crying again. It was more money than she had seen in months. Ahmed walked her outside and called a taxi. He paid the driver and gave him Rita's address. He told Rita to rest today and tomorrow morning. Take care of herself, take care of her children, and come back ready to cook. As the taxi pulled away, Rita looked back at the restaurant. Ahmed was standing there watching to make sure she got off safely. He raised his hand in a small wave. Rita clutched the bags of food to her chest. Her mind was racing. She kept thinking about her children's faces, how they would look when they saw all this food, how they would smile, how they would eat until their bellies were full. The taxi moved through the city streets. Rita looked out the window, but she wasn't really seeing the buildings and cars. She was seeing her future, a future where she could work, where she could provide, where her children wouldn't go hungry. The pain in her body was still there. The sickness hadn't gone away, but something else had appeared. Something stronger than pain, hope, real, solid hope. The kind of hope that makes you believe tomorrow might actually be better than today. The taxi stopped outside the old building where Rita lived. She paid the driver with some of the money Ahmed had given her, still unable to believe it was real. The driver helped her carry the bags to the entrance. Rita looked up at the building. It was run down and crumbling, with paint peeling off the walls. But right now, climbing those stairs to the 3rd floor felt like climbing to paradise. Each step hurt. Her legs were shaking from exhaustion and pain. The bags were heavy, but she didn't care. She kept thinking about her children's faces. Finally, she reached her door. It was a single room, barely big enough for 4 people. The door was thin and didn't lock properly anymore. But it was home. She pushed the door open. Inside, her 3 children were sitting on the floor. Little Fahad, the youngest, was leaning against his sister Zara. 8-year-old Amir was trying to read an old book he had found somewhere, probably trying to distract himself from hunger. All three heads turned when the door opened. They saw their mother standing there with bags in her hands. Big bags. For a moment nobody moved. The children just stared. They had learned not to hope for too much. Too many times their mother had come home with nothing, or with very little, but then the smell hit them. The smell of food. Real cooked food. Fahad jumped up first. His little legs carried him across the room faster than Rita had seen him move in weeks. He grabbed onto her dress, looking up at her with huge eyes. Amir and Zara were right behind him. All three children were talking at once. "What is it? Is that food? Where did you get it? Can we eat?" Rita set the bags down carefully. Her hands were shaking so badly now that she could barely hold anything. She sat down on the floor, her back against the wall, and started unpacking. Container after container came out. Rice with curry, bread, cooked vegetables, fruit. The children's eyes got bigger and bigger with each item. Zara started crying. She was 6 years old and crying because there was food. That broke something in Rita's chest. No child should cry from happiness at seeing food. Food should be normal. It should be expected. But for her children, it had become a miracle. Rita's own tears started again, but she wiped them away quickly. She needed to be strong now. She needed to serve her babies. She told them to wash their hands. All three ran to the small sink in the corner. They washed their hands properly, something they always did even when there was barely any food. Rita had taught them that. Cleanliness and dignity even in poverty. Rita spread out a cloth on the floor. It was their table. She laid out the food, opening each container. The room filled with steam and aroma. It smelled like home, like safety, like love. She served Fahad first, the youngest. His hands shook as he held the plate. He looked at his mother, asking permission with his eyes. She nodded. "Eat, Beta. Eat as much as you want." Fahad didn't need to be told twice. He started eating, and the sounds he made were both joyful and heartbreaking. He ate like someone who thought the food might disappear if he didn't eat it fast enough. Zara and Amir got their plates next. Rita watched them eat. She watched how they savored every bite, how they closed their eyes with pleasure, how they smiled between mouthfuls. This was what she had been fighting for. This moment. These smiles. These full bellies. Amir looked up at her. He was the oldest and the most aware. He asked her how she got all this food. Was she okay? What had happened? Rita told them the story. She kept it simple, but she told them the truth. About standing at the gate. About meeting Ahmed. About cooking in a real restaurant kitchen. About having a job now. A real job. The children listened, their eyes wide. Amir asked if this meant they would have food every day now. Rita nodded. Yes, she said. Every day. She promised. Fahad asked if their father was coming back. The question made the room go quiet. Rita's heart squeezed. She told him gently that their father was gone, but they would be okay. She would take care of them. They were a team, the four of them together. Rita served herself a small portion. She was hungry, desperately hungry, but watching her children eat was better than eating herself. Their happiness filled her up in a different way. But Zara noticed. She pushed her plate toward her mother and told her to eat more. Rita tried to refuse, but all three children insisted. They had learned from her. Family shares. Family takes care of each other, so Rita ate. She ate until her stomach hurt from being full for the first time in so long. The feeling was almost uncomfortable. Her body had forgotten what fullness felt like. After dinner, there was still food left. Rita carefully stored it in the containers. This would be breakfast tomorrow. And lunch. And she would work again tomorrow evening and bring home more food. The children were different after eating. They had energy. They started talking and laughing. Fahad wanted to play. Zara showed her mother a drawing she had made. Amir talked about what he was learning from his old book. Rita watched them and felt her heart might burst. This was life. This was what life should be. Children playing. Children laughing. Children being children instead of hungry, sad, quiet shadows. That night they all slept on their one mattress like they always did. But it was different tonight. Everyone's belly was full. The room smelled like food instead of emptiness. And there was hope for tomorrow. Rita lay awake for a while after the children fell asleep. Fahad was curled up against her side. Zara had her head on Rita's arm. Amir was at the edge of the mattress, already sleeping like a grown-up, trying to give others more space. Rita thought about Ahmed. about his kindness, about how he had given her a chance when he could have just walked away, about how he had seen her as a person, not as a beggar, about how he had respected her dignity. She thought about the restaurant, about cooking there again tomorrow, about how she would prove herself, about how she would work hard every single day to show him his faith in her wasn't misplaced. But mostly she thought about her children, about how they had eaten tonight, about how they would eat tomorrow, and the day after, and the day after that. The pain in her body was still there. The sickness still lived inside her. She was still weak, still sick, still poor, but she wasn't hopeless anymore, and that made all the difference. Rita closed her eyes, and for the first time in months she slept peacefully, not because all her problems were solved, but because today had shown her that kindness still existed, that chances still came, that hope was still possible. Tomorrow she would wake up early. She would make sure her children ate breakfast. She would prepare herself for work. She would cook her heart out in Ahmed's kitchen, but tonight she would just sleep, with her 3 babies close to her, with full stomachs all around, with the knowledge that tomorrow was no longer something to fear. The old building creaked in the wind. Outside, the city continued its noise, but inside that small room on the 3rd floor, 4 people slept the sleep of the fed, the sleep of the hopeful, the sleep of those who had been drowning and found a hand pulling them up. It wasn't a perfect life. It wasn't a rich life, but it was a life with possibility, and sometimes that's all you need to keep going. Just a little bit of possibility. Just a small door opening when all the others had slammed shut. Rita dreamed that night. Not of being rich, not of living in a big house. She dreamed simply of cooking, of her children eating, of tomorrow coming, and of being enough, just enough. The next evening, Rita arrived at the restaurant 30 minutes early. She had spent the whole day preparing herself mentally. She had made sure her children ate breakfast. She had cleaned herself up as best as she could with the limited water they had. She had tied her hair back neatly and worn her cleanest dress. Ahmed was surprised to see her so early. He smiled and told her that early was good, but she should also save her energy. The evening shift could be tiring, but Rita wanted to be early. She wanted to show him she was serious. She wanted to prove this wasn't just luck. This was who she was. Someone who showed up. Someone who worked hard. The first few weeks fell into a routine. Rita worked 3 evenings a week, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. She would arrive early, prepare her special dishes, and stay until the dinner service was done. Ahmed gave her freedom in what she cooked. He told her to make the food she knew best. The food from her heart. Each day she would prepare 2 or 3 dishes. Sometimes it was her grandmother's curry. Sometimes it was rice cooked with whole spices. Sometimes it was simple lentil dishes that tasted like home. The other kitchen staff watched her at first with curiosity. Who was this woman? Why had the boss hired someone who clearly had no formal training? Someone who had to sit down sometimes while cooking? Someone who would pause to take medicine from a small bottle she kept in her bag? But slowly their attitude changed. They watched how Rita handled food, how she tasted and adjusted, how she never wasted anything, how she treated every ingredient with respect, how she could tell just by touching rice if it was cooked perfectly. One of the younger cooks, a boy named Bilal who was just learning, started asking her questions. How did she know when the oil was ready? How did she get the spices so balanced? Could she teach him? Rita was surprised. Someone wanted to learn from her? She was nobody. She had no certificates, no training, just her grandmother's knowledge and years of cooking, but she showed Bilal what she knew. She explained things simply. She let him taste as she cooked, teaching him to understand flavors with his tongue, not just with measurements. Soon, others were watching too. Even the head cook, who had been a bit cold to her at first, started asking for her opinion on dishes. He had noticed that customers were specifically requesting her specials. People were coming back asking for that home-style curry or those special lentils. Ahmed noticed everything. He noticed how Rita never complained, how she pushed through pain that was obvious in her face, how she sometimes gripped the counter hard, her knuckles white but kept working, how she took her medicine during breaks trying to hide it, not wanting anyone to think she was weak. He also noticed the small things, how she saved the good scraps, the usable vegetable ends, asking if she could take them home, not for herself, she said, but to make simple soups for her children. Nothing should be wasted. He noticed how she counted every coin of her salary carefully, her hands shaking. How she asked him if it would be okay to get paid a day early once because her rent was due and she was short. He noticed how she thanked him every single day, as if working was a privilege, not a right. One evening, Ahmed watched her collapse into a chair during her break. She didn't know he was watching. Her face showed the pain she usually tried to hide. She rubbed her joints, wincing. She took her medicine with a sip of water. Her hands shook so badly she almost dropped the small bottle. Ahmed felt something tighten in his chest. He started paying more attention to her health. He noticed patterns. Some days were worse than others. On bad days, her movements were slower. She had to rest more, but she never asked to go home. She never said she couldn't work. He started doing small things, making sure she had a proper chair in the kitchen, keeping bottled water nearby so she didn't have to walk far, giving her tasks that didn't require standing the whole time. He did these things quietly without making a big deal of it. He knew Rita had pride. He knew she didn't want pity. Meanwhile, Rita's children were changing. Amir, the 8-year-old, was back in school. With regular food in his belly, he could concentrate again. He brought home a drawing once, showing his mother in a big kitchen cooking. Under it, he had written in careful letters, "My mother is the best cook." Rita kept that drawing folded in her bag. On hard days, when the pain was bad and she felt like giving up, she would look at it. It reminded her why she was doing this. Zara, the 6-year-old, had stopped having those sad eyes. She smiled more. She played with other children in their building. She was becoming a normal little girl again, and baby Fahad, who had been so thin and quiet, was now running around laughing, being the 4-year-old he should be. Every evening when Rita came home with food, the children would gather around her. They had a routine now. They would eat together, talk about their day, and Rita would tell them about the restaurant, about the people who came there, about the kitchen, about Ahmed's kindness. She was saving money, too. Not much, but something. Every week she would put a few coins in a small tin can hidden under the mattress. It was for emergencies, for medicine, for a day when she might not be able to work. The weeks turned into months. Rita became a permanent part of the restaurant. Customers started asking for her by name. Well, they didn't know her name, but they would ask for the special cook or the lady who makes the home-style food. Ahmed started featuring her dishes on the menu board outside. Traditional home cooking, it said. People loved it because it tasted like something their mothers or grandmothers might make. It had soul. It had love. You could taste the care in every bite. Rita's confidence grew. She started suggesting new dishes. Ahmed always said yes. He trusted her judgment now. He had learned that she had an instinct for food that you couldn't teach. You either had it or you didn't. And Rita had it. The other staff members had fully accepted her now. They joked with her. They asked about her children. On her birthday, which she had mentioned once in passing, they surprised her with a small cake. Rita cried, of course. She cried at every kindness, still not quite believing this was her life now. But Ahmed also noticed something else. He noticed that while Rita was better, healthier than when she first arrived, the underlying sickness was still there. She was still in pain. She still struggled. She still took medicine that clearly wasn't quite enough. One evening, after service was done, Ahmed asked Rita to sit with him. He wanted to talk. Rita's heart jumped with fear. Was he going to let her go? Had she done something wrong? But Ahmed's face was kind. He asked her about her health. Really asked. Not just a polite question, but a real one. What was wrong? Was she seeing a doctor? What treatment was she getting? Rita told him the truth. She had a chronic condition that affected her joints and made her weak. She had been to free clinics, but they could only do so much. The medicine she took was basic, not the good kind. The kind that actually worked cost money she didn't have. Someday, if it got worse, she might need surgery. But that was impossible. Surgery cost more than she would make in 5 years. Ahmed listened quietly. He didn't offer solutions right away. He just listened. When Rita finished talking, he thanked her for being honest. He told her to keep doing what she was doing. Just keep cooking. Keep taking care of her children. Let him think about things. Rita went home that night worried. What did "let me think" mean? Was he thinking of letting her go because she was sick? She couldn't lose this job. She couldn't go back to how things were before. But she didn't know that Ahmed was thinking something completely different. He was thinking about how to help. Not in a way that would hurt Rita's pride. Not in a way that would make her feel like charity. But in a real way, a way that would give her the treatment she needed while letting her keep her dignity. He just needed to figure out how. Ahmed stood in his restaurant the next morning with a heavy heart and a determined mind. He had made a decision during those sleepless hours. He was going to ask for help. Not just his help. Community help. He started with his regular customers. The people who came to his restaurant 3-4 times a week. The ones who had been requesting Rita's special dishes. The ones who had unknowingly been touched by her cooking. The first person he talked to was an elderly man named Rashid, who came for lunch every day. Ahmed sat with him and told him Rita's story, about how she had come to his gate desperate to feed her children, about how her cooking had touched so many people, about how she was now in the hospital, unable to afford treatment. Rashid listened carefully. When Ahmed finished, the old man was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his wallet and put some money on the table. It wasn't a huge amount, but it was something. He said he had been eating Rita's food for months. She had made him remember his late wife's cooking. He would help. Ahmed was overwhelmed. He hadn't even asked for money yet. He had just been sharing the story, but word spread quickly. Rashid told other regular customers. They told their friends. Within 2 days, people were coming to the restaurant asking about Rita, asking how they could help. Ahmed realized this was bigger than he had thought. People wanted to help. They just needed to know how. He and Nadia spent an entire night organizing. They decided to hold a special dinner, a fundraising event at the restaurant. All the money collected would go toward Rita's medical expenses, but they wanted to do it right. They wanted it to be respectful, not charity but appreciation. They would feature Rita's recipes, the dishes she had created. They would tell her story but with dignity. Ahmed made flyers, simple ones explaining the situation without being too dramatic. He put them up in the restaurant and around the neighborhood. He posted about it on social media, though he wasn't very good with those things. The response shocked him. Within 3 days, the dinner was fully booked. People were calling asking if they could buy tickets even if they couldn't attend, just to donate. A local newspaper heard about it and sent a reporter. The story ran on the front page of the local section. Restaurant owner helps cook who feeds more than just stomachs, the headline read. Then a television station called. They wanted to do a feature story. Ahmed was nervous about this. He didn't want to exploit Rita's situation. But Nadia convinced him that awareness could bring more help. The TV interview aired on the evening news. They showed the restaurant. They showed Rita's photo that Ahmed had taken with his phone. They interviewed some regular customers who talked about her food, how it made them feel at home, how it reminded them of their mothers and grandmothers. After the segment aired, Ahmed's phone didn't stop ringing. People wanted to donate. People wanted to help. Some offered money. Some offered services. A doctor who had been watching the news called. He specialized in autoimmune conditions. He said he would treat Rita for free. He couldn't do everything for free, but he could reduce costs significantly and help navigate the system to get her the care she needed. A lawyer called. She said she could help with paperwork, making sure Rita's children were properly registered in school, helping with any legal issues Rita might have. No charge. A local pharmacy owner said he could provide medications at cost. Not free, but much cheaper than retail prices. The fundraising dinner was scheduled for Saturday night. Ahmed spent the entire week preparing. He got help from his staff. They all volunteered their time. Nobody wanted payment for this event. Rita was still in the hospital. Ahmed visited her every day, updating her on what was happening. At first, she couldn't believe it. People were doing this for her. Why? She was nobody. Ahmed told her she was wrong. She was somebody to every person who had eaten her food. She was somebody to her children. She was somebody to him and his family. She mattered. Rita cried, as she always did. But these were different tears. These were tears of being seen, of being valued, of mattering to the world. Saturday came. The restaurant was transformed. Tables were decorated simply but beautifully. Nadia had brought flowers from her garden. The staff had cleaned every corner until everything shined. People started arriving at 6 o'clock. They came dressed nicely, treating this like a special occasion. Because it was. It wasn't just a fundraiser. It was a community coming together. Ahmed had prepared several of Rita's signature dishes. He had followed her recipes exactly, the ones she had written down for him. The kitchen was filled with the aromas of home cooking, of love made edible. As people ate, Ahmed told Rita's story. He kept it simple and honest. He talked about the day she appeared at his gate, about her dignity and desperation, about her skill in the kitchen, about her children and her struggles, about her collapse and her need for help. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. People understood. They saw themselves or their mothers or their struggles in her story. They saw what life could do to good people. After dinner, people started making donations. Some gave cash. Some wrote checks. Some transferred money through their phones. The amounts varied. Some gave $5. Some gave $500. It didn't matter. Every contribution was given with heart. A woman stood up and said she wanted to contribute differently. She owned a small apartment building. She had a one-bedroom unit that had just been vacated. She would give it to Rita and her children rent-free for 1 year. Just 1 year to give her time to get back on her feet. A man who owned a medical supply company said he would donate a proper bed for Rita, and warm blankets, and whatever else the family needed to set up their new home. But a teacher from the local school said she would personally tutor Rita's children to help them catch up on anything they had missed during their hard times. The offers kept coming, not just money but time, skills, kindness. The community was wrapping itself around this family they had never met but somehow cared about. By the end of the night, they had raised more than enough for several months of treatment. Combined with the free services offered, Rita would be able to get the care she needed. She would have a safe place to live. Her children would be stable. Ahmed sat down at the end of the night, exhausted but filled with something he couldn't quite name. Hope, faith in humanity, joy, all of it mixed together. The news coverage continued. More people reached out in the following days. An organization that helps single mothers said they wanted to create a program for women like Rita. Women who needed not handouts but hands up, opportunities to work, dignity in earning. Rita stayed in the hospital for another week. They got her stabilized on proper medication. The free doctor visited her daily, adjusting her treatment, making sure she understood her condition and how to manage it. When she was finally released, Ahmed and Nadia took her to her new apartment. Rita walked in and couldn't speak. It was small, but it was clean. It had a real kitchen, 2 rooms, windows with glass that actually kept out the cold, a bathroom that worked. Her children ran through the rooms laughing and amazed. They had never lived anywhere this nice. Fahad kept touching the walls like he couldn't believe they were real. That night, Rita cooked dinner in her new kitchen, just a simple meal, but she cooked it on a real stove, in a real home with her children safe and fed and happy around her. She thought about everything that had happened. How she had stood at that gate just a few months ago, desperate and dying. How one man's kindness had started a chain reaction. How a community of strangers had come together for someone they didn't know. She thought about all the people who had given money, time, skills. All because she had cooked food that reminded them of home. All because they saw her humanity and responded with their own. As she served her children dinner, Rita made a silent promise. Someday, when she was stronger and more stable, she would pay this forward. She would help someone else the way she had been helped. She would be someone's Ahmed, someone's chance, someone's hope. Because now she understood something important. You don't have to be rich to help others. You don't have to have a lot to give something. Sometimes all someone needs is to be seen, to be treated with dignity, to be given a chance, and that was something anyone could offer. 6 months passed like a dream Rita kept thinking she would wake up from. But this wasn't a dream. This was her new reality. She stood in Ahmed's restaurant kitchen on a Wednesday morning, feeling stronger than she had in years. The medication was working. With proper treatment, regular meals, and less stress, her body had started healing. She still had bad days, but they were fewer now. The constant pain that had been her companion for so long had reduced to occasional discomfort. She had gained weight. Not much, but enough that her face had color again. Her hands didn't shake as much. She could stand for longer periods. She could think clearly without the fog of malnutrition and untreated illness clouding her mind. Ahmed had kept her job, but he had also helped her do something more. He had helped her start her own small catering business. It had been his idea. He noticed how many people asked if they could order Rita's food for parties and family gatherings. He saw an opportunity, not to compete with his restaurant, but to expand what Rita could do. He helped her get the permits and licenses needed. He let her use his kitchen during off hours when the restaurant was closed. He taught her about pricing, about managing orders, about running a small business. Rita's catering started small. A birthday party here, a family dinner there. But word spread. People loved the authentic home-style cooking, the kind you couldn't get at fancy catering companies, the kind that tasted like love and tradition. She called her little business Grandmother's Kitchen, honoring the woman who had taught her everything. Ahmed helped her make simple flyers. Nadia helped her set up social media accounts, though Rita was still learning how those worked. Her children were thriving. Amir was doing well in school. The tutoring had helped him catch up, and now he was even ahead in some subjects. He talked about wanting to be a teacher someday. He wanted to help other kids who struggled like he had. Zara had joined a dance class at the community center. Someone from the fundraiser had paid for a year of classes. She came home every week excited to show her mother new moves. She was confident now, smiling, full of life. Fahad was in kindergarten. He loved school. He made friends easily. He drew pictures constantly, and his teachers said he was creative and bright. He didn't remember much about the hungry times, which Rita was grateful for. Those memories were hers to carry, not his. The apartment had become a real home. Donations had provided furniture, dishes, clothes. Rita had planted herbs in small pots on the windowsill. Mint, cilantro, basil. She used them in her cooking, and it made the apartment smell wonderful. She had also started something new. Every Saturday morning, she cooked at a community shelter. She prepared big pots of food for people who were where she had been just months ago. Hungry, desperate, lost. She understood them in a way others couldn't. She didn't judge. She didn't lecture. She just cooked and served and smiled. And when someone thanked her, she would say, "Pay it forward someday. That's all I ask." The shelter manager told her that people asked for her by name. They came on Saturdays because they knew Rita would be cooking. It wasn't just about the food being good. It was about how she served it. With respect. With dignity. Like they were guests, not charity cases. Ahmed watched Rita's transformation with quiet pride. She had become more than an employee. She had become a partner of sorts. A friend, definitely. Someone whose success felt like his own success. His restaurant had grown too. The publicity from Rita's story had brought in new customers. But more than that, it had reminded him why he started the restaurant in the first place. Not just to make money, but to feed people, to create community, to make a difference. He and Rita often talked during quiet moments in the kitchen. She told him she had been thinking. She wanted to do something bigger someday. She wanted to help other women like her, women who had skills but no opportunities, women who needed not charity but a chance to work. Ahmed encouraged her. He said when she was ready they could figure it out together. Maybe a training program, maybe a cooperative, maybe something they hadn't even thought of yet. The future was open. One evening a woman came to the restaurant. She looked familiar to Ahmed, but he couldn't place her at first. Then he remembered. She was the reporter who had done the first story about Rita. She wanted to do a follow-up story. 6 months later, where was Rita now? How had things changed? Rita agreed to the interview. She wasn't comfortable with attention, but she understood that her story might help others. It might show people that kindness mattered, that communities could make a difference, that one person's compassion could change everything. The interview ran the following week. It showed Rita cooking in Ahmed's kitchen. It showed her apartment and her children. It showed her delivering food to the shelter. It showed a woman who had been saved and was now saving others in her own way. The response was overwhelming again. More people wanted to hire her catering service. More people wanted to donate to programs for struggling mothers. Organizations reached out wanting to learn about Ahmed's model of giving people opportunities instead of just handouts. Rita handled it all with grace and humility. She never acted like she was special. She was just grateful. Grateful to Ahmed. Grateful to the community. Grateful to God for giving her this second chance. On the anniversary of the day she had first approached Ahmed at that gate, Rita did something special. She went back to that neighborhood. She stood at that same gate where she had stood a year ago, weak and desperate. But this time she had bags of food with her, containers of her cooking. She gave them out to workers passing by, delivery drivers, street cleaners, people who might be struggling, people who might need a good meal. She didn't tell them her story. She just smiled and offered food. Some people accepted, some looked suspicious, but those who took it and tasted it would smile. Real food, made with care, made with love. One man asked her why she was doing this. Rita thought for a moment. Then she told him a short version of her story. How she had stood at this very spot a year ago. How kindness had saved her. How she was just passing it forward. The man's eyes filled with tears. He told her he was struggling too, trying to feed his family, working hard but never having quite enough. Rita gave him extra containers and her phone number. She told him if he needed work to call her. Maybe she had some catering jobs she needed help with. That evening, Rita went home to her children. They were doing homework at the kitchen table. The apartment was warm. There was food in the refrigerator. There was medicine in the cabinet. There was hope in the air. Amir looked up from his books and smiled at his mother. He said his teacher had asked the class to write about their hero. He had written about her. Rita felt tears coming but blinked them away. She wasn't anyone's hero. She was just a mother who loved her children, a cook who made honest food, a human being who had been helped and was trying to help others. But maybe, she thought, maybe that was enough. Maybe being ordinary and kind was its own form of heroism. Maybe surviving with dignity was brave. Maybe asking for help and accepting it with grace was courageous. She served dinner that night, watching her children eat. Not desperately anymore, not worried about where the next meal would come from. Just eating, just being kids, just being normal. Later, after the children were asleep, Rita sat by the window looking at the city lights. She thought about the journey, about the low points and the turning points, about Ahmed's kindness and the community's compassion. She thought about all the people who had helped her, not just with money but with time and skills and respect. She thought about how they had seen her humanity when she had almost forgotten it herself. She made another promise to herself. She would never forget what it felt like to be desperate, to be invisible, to be one bad day away from disaster. She would remember, and she would help others remember, because people who remembered were people who helped. The city hummed with its nighttime sounds. Somewhere out there, someone was probably standing at a gate like she had been. Someone was probably crying over hungry children. Someone was probably wondering if tomorrow would ever come. Rita couldn't save everyone. She couldn't fix all the problems. But she could do her part. She could cook. She could feed people. She could offer dignity and respect. She could give chances the way she had been given a chance. That was her purpose now. Not just to survive, but to help others survive. Not just to succeed, but to pull others up with her. She looked at the small pots of herbs on her windowsill. They had grown from tiny seeds into something useful, something that fed and nourished. Just like she had grown from that desperate woman at the gate into someone stronger, someone who could give instead of just receive. The night was peaceful. The future was uncertain, as futures always are. But Rita wasn't afraid anymore. She had learned that kindness existed, that communities cared, that hope was real, and most importantly, she had learned that everyone deserves a chance. Everyone deserves dignity. Everyone deserves to be seen as human, not as a problem or a charity case. Those lessons would stay with her forever, and she would spend the rest of her life teaching them to others. One meal at a time, one kind gesture at a time, one second chance at a time. Because that's what her grandmother had really taught her. Not just how to cook, but how to feed souls, not just stomachs.